Good morning, dear listeners. It's War Notes live at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And there are no hidden messages here, just clear updates you can follow. Today, we are talking grocery prices from your pantry staples to a wartime recipe that made do when times were tough. Let's get right into it with my co host, the baby in the background, as you know. And he likes to jump in when he's ready. He says hello. Today again is Monday, July 14th, 2025, and it is 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, let's start with the numbers from Walmart. Okay. And I will repeat this program for anyone who's just jumping in midway. So at Walmart right now, white rice for a 14-ounce bag last week was $2.40. This week it is $2.46. Okay, so that's went up by 46, not 46, that's went up by 6 cents, the white rice. All-purpose flour, a 5-pound bag last week was $4.98. This week, that same all-purpose flour is $5.24. So big jumps here. It looks like a little bit of pennies here and there, but they're big jumps. That's what? 26 cents jump on all-purpose flour. So if flour is something that you use a lot to make your breads or anything in general, you should always have flour on hand, right? They could be used in gravies. They could be used to bake your bread. If you're not a big baker, they could be used for your biscuits, whatever the case may be. But again, last week, all-purpose flour at Walmart for a 5-pound bag was $4.98. And this week, it is $5.24. For granulated sugar in Walmart last week, 4-pound bag last week was $2.98. $2.98 it was. Ladies out there, $2.98 for sugar. Okay, last week, okay, and we're talking about a 4-pound bag, okay, and of course that depends on what brand you get. If you get like Domino's or anything, of that sort, which I don't buy Domino's sugar, just buy the Great Value brand, but on average, it's about $3.12 sugar, okay. Rice flour, 24 ounces, went from $9.99 if you use rice flour to $10.77. Again, it might not seem like much, that 77 cents, but that's expensive. So again, if you use rice flour last week, you better go stock up on it now, because last week it was $9.99 and now it's $10.77 for that same rice flour. That's 24 ounces in Walmart, okay? At Kroger, prices are similar at Kroger. If you're a Kroger shopper, rice moved from $2.35 to $2.45 on average. Flour at Kroger climbed from $5.10 to $5.30 at Kroger. So you know already that the prices are just shooting up there when flour is at $5.30. Welcome, I earn with Miss Jackson to the program. Welcome to the program, Miss Jackson. And at Kroger, sugar rose from $3.05 to $3.20 on average for a small container of sugar, which is very expensive now these days. And of course, I'm going to repeat the program for those of you just jumping in. Remember that the live streams are always available about 10 to 15 minutes after I sign off from the live stream. Now, overall food inflation is around 2.9% year over year. Grocery prices rose about 2.2% just from April to May. That's heavier than general inflation. That's according to Walmart.com and 5 other reputable sources and more. And what does that mean for you as a listener? You, me as a consumer, you as a consumer? If staples like basic things like rice, sugar, and flour go up even by a few cents, it adds up, especially for families. Welcome, Gabriella. I'm sorry, I took a long time for that one. Sorry about that, Gabriella. Sorry about that. Welcome to the program. You are welcome here. Everybody is welcome here. So yeah, of course, rice and sugar and flour, if they go up just by a few cents, that adds up a lot, especially for families cooking on a tight budget every week. For an example, ramen noodles at Walmart went up to $3.97 for a 12-pack of noodles. So if I have noodle queens in here or noodle kings, okay, $3.97 for a 12-pack of noodles still has me going bonkers that this is even possible. That's a poor man's meal, okay? 67 cents for 1 pack of noodles. Remember, all my old schoolers in here, okay? those noodles used to be like 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents. Okay. So every cent counts, and all of it adds up, especially if you're on a tight budget every week. Now, as a bonus, here is a simple World War II era recipe called the 1-egg victory cake during rationing time, and it gave people a sweet treat despite shortages. The ingredients that you need, ladies, grab your pen and papers, write it down. Remember, if a cyber attack occurred right now, you would not be able to access your phone, you will not be able to look up things, and you will not have the information that you need to have on hand in order to use the ingredients that you have in your house. Use them up. You need a 1/3 cup of shortening. So for the ladies that's listening, scrambling to get a pen and paper that I know, or you're trying to find your notepad on your phone, but you have to try to get used to going back to paper and pen. Okay, yes, I'm talking to you out there. The person who's listening, I'm talking to you all. So you're going to need 1/3 cup of shortening. You're going to need a 2/3 cup of sugar. You're going to need 1 egg. Beat it very well. You're going to need a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. You'll need 1/3 cup of light corn syrup. You'll need 1 cup of milk, 2 cups of cake flour, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. That's my co-host here in the background. Here you go. Bye. Okay, back in action here. So you need 2 cups of cake flour, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay, so again, for my listeners who are just jumping in, if you need to write down a recipe, which you should, because if there's a cyber attack, you won't be able to access this recipe or your phone. So the 1-egg victory cake, those of you who are short on eggs in the house, short on certain ingredients, and you want to make something sweet for you and your family, you need 1/3 cup of shortening. Please jot that down. You need 2/3 cups of sugar. You need 1 egg beaten well. You need 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. 1/3 cup of light corn syrup or honey. You need 1 cup of milk. You need 2 cups of cake flour. You need 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And you need 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay. Now, the first instruction to make this cake, please jot it down, ladies. You need to cream the shortening and the sugar together. So you're going to cream it together. My co-host is tired, trying to go to sleep. Okay. So you got to cream the shortening and sugar together. And then what you'll do is you'll beat in an egg. You'll beat the egg inside of the mixture with a little bit of the vanilla, if you have it on hand. And then you'll add the corn syrup and milk alternatively, right, with the dry ingredients, not just all together all at once. You want to take your time with it. And while you're doing that, I should have told you beforehand, you need to make sure that your oven is set to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, because once you have all of these ingredients together, you're going to bake this cake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes in an 8-inch pan or whatever you have on hand. It's whatever you have on hand. And even with rations, families could enjoy a cake. So this cake that I'm giving you the recipe for, it makes 8 servings. Okay. It will work. And it's yummy, and you should have the ingredients on hand. Okay. I am going to go to a quick pause, and I am going to repeat the program for those of you who are just joining in. If you guys want to continue to enjoy the live, because my live streams are always available for you all to watch once I'm done streaming. So I will be back in about 30 to 90 seconds. And I hope that you ladies have a pen and paper. I know that's a little weird now these days. A lot of folks don't carry around pen and paper. They're all about, their notes in their phone or whatever the case may be. And I could be wrong. There could be a lot more people trying to use their nostalgia and go back to old school ways and use pen and paper. I use both, obviously. If I'm doing videos with you here, I use the phone and I use paper and pen, because if there was a cyber attack, remember, you guys will not be able to access information on your phone. So I'll be back in about 30 seconds, go back over and review the program, the broadcast with you all, for those of you just jumping in, and then we'll go ahead and close it out for this episode. Thank you all so much for being here. Be back in just a jiff. Good morning, everyone. It is 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome back to War Notes. Today is Monday, July 14th. For those of you just jumping in to the program, we are live and there are no hidden messages. There's clear updates that you can follow. And today we are talking grocery prices here with my co-host that's fighting his sleep. And I'm recording while he's fighting his sleep. But anywho's, we are talking grocery prices from your pantry staples to a wartime recipe that's made do when times were tough. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into it again. Let me start with the numbers from Walmart. White rice, 14-ounce bag last week was $2.40. And this week on average is $2.46 for that same bag of white rice in Walmart. All-purpose flour, 5-pound bag last week was $4.98 at Walmart. And this week on average is $5.24. Please stock up on flour. And sugar, a 4-pound bag last week was about $3 and change. On average, it's about $3.12 in between all the brands on average. Rice flour, 24-ounce on average was $9.99, and now it's went up to $10.77. So make sure you stock up on those things, if those things that you use. If you are a Kroger shopper, rice moved from $2.35 last week to about $2.45 on average. Flour climbed from $5.10 to $5.30 on average at Kroger from last week to, that's a 20-cent jump. It's getting expensive. The sugar at Kroger right now on average about $3.20. That's jumping too as well. A lot of these prices are jumping by 10 cents every week, and that's awful because once it adds up and you can't afford that dollar or two, then people start to see how it affects your pocket. Overall food inflation is around 2.9% year over year, especially with the Trump administration. Now, the prices have gone even higher with these tariffs. Grocery prices rose about 2.2% just from April to May. That's heavier than general inflation. Now, what does that mean necessarily for you, I, and all of us as consumers? If staples like rice and sugar and flour go up even by just a few cents, it adds up, especially for families cooking on tight budgets every week. And I'm sure that everyone will agree. Now, as a bonus, here's a simple World War II era recipe called a 1-egg victory cake during rationing, and it gave people a sweet treat despite the shortages, right? Those ingredients that I reviewed already, that I will review again, of course, right now, is 1/3 cup of shortening. And you're going to need, besides your shortening, you're going to need 2/3 cup of sugar. You'll need 1 egg beaten well. You're going to need a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. You're going to need 1/3 cup of light corn syrup or honey, whatever you have on hand. If you got to use molasses, that's what you got to use. You need 1 cup of milk, 2 cups of cake flour, and 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And you need 1 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Before you do anything else, please set your oven at 350 and get your oven hot and ready. The first thing to do is to cream that shortening and sugar together and then beat an egg in and the vanilla. Then you're going to add the corn syrup and milk alternately with the dry ingredients, not just all together, just little by little. As you mix it all together. And then you're going to bake this at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes in an 8-inch pan. And if you have a bigger pan, if you have a smaller pan, you're going to do whatever you have. You're going to deal with whatever you have. So even with rations, families could enjoy a cake. So it doesn't matter if you're on rations or not, just you can still enjoy a cake. It makes about 8 servings. Okay. So again, the live is going to be available and the stream is going to be available just a few minutes after I'm done streaming here. And that is your full update. Grocery prices are inching upward in rice flour, sugar, and rice flour, all showing small but steady rises. Now, food inflation sits near 3%. And here's a taste of resilience with that World War II victory cake recipe. Simple, affordable, and of course, indeed, nostalgic. Thank you all for tuning in to War Notes. If this helped you in today's grocery planning, please hit subscribe, share with a friend who's tracking prices, and try that victory cake for old time flavor. I am your host, Paviel G. Please stay smart, stay resourceful, and take care of your pantry and your soul. Goodbye and happy cooking.